Excuse me, I'm just finishing my supper. We're a little late tonight, Kenny. And there's a few questions, and maybe we can just go ahead. Okay? We're just checking everything out. So Ian Rimmer in England has asked a question having to do with conscious awareness and the whole process of becoming more conscious, and how that conscious awareness deepens. A little hard without showing a picture, but the business of walking around doing our personalized thing is usually related to the beta beat or frequency of an individual. It's just a language, meaning you're not so much hyper, but you're very attentive and engaging with the world and functioning and interacting with whatever you believe is important to interact with, because really that's how we normally function. Whatever you think is important, everybody is different, of course. You have a tendency to engage that way, whatever that way would be, with the use of your personality. When people just start talking about the alpha, you start talking about drifting off towards sleep, or kind of feeling numb, or not being able to function well because they're sort of dozy a bit. And it could be caused by all kinds of stuff, but it could also be caused by an idea that relates to learning how to function consciously in an aspect of the alpha state that enables you to perceive deeper than what is normally considered normal in our world in this day and age. So, and by the way, if you do fall off to sleep, you're initially in the alpha for quite some time, and you might be able to go even deeper, and then you can't remember anything. There's nothing at all. And your dreams often occur in the alpha when you come up a little bit and you're almost able to perceive your dream, and that causes effectively a REM state to occur. So what we're talking about here with respect to Ian's question is the ability to go deeper consciously in the world, so that other states can be perceived, or energy can be perceived as that energy can move through the chakras that we talk about, or Sephiroth, fireballs, whatever it is. But the focal point, as you can anticipate, slowly moves away from constant beta interaction, being right, being wrong, being this, being that. And in that little space between the beta and the alpha states, in a conscious way, you're allowing yourself to become a little bit more conscious about what's going on in the world of you personally, which would include perceiving energy from other states moving through you, and energy from these states moving through you. What that really means is you become more conscious of the emotional energy that you interact with from others, of course, but also of your own. Now, basically, in that particular mode, you're not really set up to be used to interacting with you consciously, emotionally. Only emotion becomes conscious when you're reacting to something, or when someone else is wrong, or you're feeling bad, and you're flipping into the bad mode or the good mode, and your focus is really on the intensity of emotion. and you're aligning with and using that to describe how it's affecting you and what the cause is. And the cause may not be that, but that's you perceive that that cause may be there based on the idea that you are considering things from how you normally engage with the world. Often not really as true in that perception as what you believe it has to be because it's yours. You slow that down a little bit. In other words, it means you're looking at the whole world through the eyes of you, all the training you've had, and how you believe things have to be based on your understanding and what you've learned. There's a lot of learning to go, always, no matter what. And learning how to be okay with that is important, because once you begin to be conscious of the alpha plane, you're trying to remain attentive to everything. And your first reflex will be to be uncomfortable with that, because it does make you sometimes feel a little bit dozy. In other words, you're moving into a state, a literally state-dependent place that is related to softening down your beta equipment or your attention and your self-validation, which is really there for all of us to in our survival modes. So none of this is negative, but when you're learning how to deepen your awareness of the world around you and the world within you, it cuts down to the outside world and the inside world. The inside world isn't only you're having a reaction and someone caused it. You caused it or somebody else. It's not that. It's the energy that is engaging with you from a deeper level, and you're learning how to perceive that that is really real inside of you, as opposed to just paying attention to the reflex world and a reactive world. If you go deeper than that, Ian was talking about the theta level, you can't keep conscious. You can barely practice maintaining the alpha states very well. And practice is a really key word, especially if you're meditators out there. You will notice that from time to time, there will be zones around the body, often related to chakras or sephirot, but zones around the body that you can perceive, through which those energies that are from other states, the zones, when you perceive them, that is energy moving through or moving towards you. In other words, you're learning how to become aware all around you, so you have a whole zone that you can become aware of that signifies, that allows you to perceive that which is moving not only in your direction, but through you, and not only through you, but you grabbed onto it and made it yours. And this is what normally people have done from the beginning of being reflexively conscious in the womb. You hear, you sense, you perceive, and then there is a storage of information that begins to occur in the nervous system, including the brain, of course, in the nervous system, that really accentuates moments that are clearly valuable to you, because you've had practiced having them valuable to you all through your life. You've copied from other people. This is in the scientific world, they're calling these mirror neurons that are so greatly affecting everybody and everybody's concepts. Well, The sages knew about these so-called mirror neurons a long time ago. All you had to do was be around another person and you would perceive everything in them, provided you could perceive everything in you. They would perceive where those frequencies were operating in and through them and how they were being used by the individual personality for the purpose of creating a personality. This is not well known in a normal Western or generally Eastern orientation. But these people who were perceptive in alpha states and a little deeper alpha states than would be normal, they were watching them. Now, watching has a different definition. Watching really relates to the concept of perception. You are perceiving something almost remotely, but not remotely. You are within yourself, but you are viewing that which is occurring within you and that which is occurring from the outside world into you. And also that which you are learning how to perceive, that which you use all the time, because however you operate is significant to you. And these have both, if you look at polarity, positive and negative types of things you won't like, and some things you will like, and some things you'll justify, and some things you'll defend. Sometimes you'll be ecstatic about them, and you'll know you're right, and all the rest of it that goes with all of these things. And it's fine. You're learning how to perceive what is there without being negative to them. Now, this offers another state of engagement within the personality construct, while slowing down and not only viewing the personality construct, but viewing that which is beyond it and including that which creates it. Wow, what a mouthful, but nonetheless real. Prior to an experience of this nature, you would not consider it real. You would consider it suspect. It's the nature of us to consider things suspect. It's also the nature of us to consider things suspect after we experience things, and to come up with a cause that is affiliated with what is normal for you. This is normal, this kind of engagement. And you validate and invalidate how things are and how things should be based on the grouping, the crowd that you hang out with. In our world, there's 8 million of them, 8 billion, sorry. It'd be kind of lean pickings if there were only 8 million. But the issue there is beginning to recognize that this is slightly different than what is called normal in our world. This whole concept of mirror neurons will allow people to talk a little bit broader, but unfortunately, in the normalizing of mirror neurons, it will take some time for most individuals to even allow that concept to be real. Already some scientists agree with it, some scientists don't, but most are agreeing. I like the idea simply because it seems to be, if you experience this, at least you know this is not really spooky. This is recognizing something that we know very little about in relationship to how we function daily. Now, the business of moving into the alpha state more and more while in the conscious state, and the blending of these two states, and perhaps a little deeper, you are maintaining and considering the possibility that perception or seeing in the old stages of consciousness is complicated and complex, as we are complicated and complex. And there are rules around a personality. Personality engages with other people and assesses other people's views based on what they already know and what they think. So if there's something new, you will not want to add to what you already think is valuable, called belief. Then you will hold your attention and you will express your attention some way in you. The other person will know it right away because you're an open book and you believe everything is hidden. Not real. Everything isn't hidden, and you're not as open as you think. Everyone else is focused on them and how they function. So there's a very refined buffer zone there that if you recognize that that may be so, then it allows you lots of time to grow until you're a sage. Because everybody else will be focusing on what they have to do to be a sage. And they'll be considering the pecking order of sageness. This is normal. This is what everybody does. If you don't believe me, spend a week with yourself. Then find a friend. Spend a week with them. That'll do it. You'll know definitely that they are like that. You'll be maybe not so much you, because you'll be literally okay with defending territory based on your position and place. This is not a negative thing. This is just, it's kind of funny, but everybody does it. Developing as a being to go deeper and deeper and deeper into territory that is only theorized is but a theoretical process until it becomes conscious. And even when it becomes conscious, we have a lot of words out there from different perspectives that you'll want to use some of those words, depending on your belief systems, to explain this. Sometimes everything is called spiritual that is not normal. Sometimes everything is called terrible if it's not normal. There must be an in-between there someplace, but it's based on whoever is listening and whoever watches and whoever has the experience. We have a great tendency, if we have an internal, wonderful, peaceful development that is so wondrous, just to kind of get us to the point where we can actually think there might be something possible, and then we actually get on with our growth after that. But if we have that, we will describe that based on our belief system. Entirely the way it should be. It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that's how we will describe it. That's basically one of our most forthright things that we do to enable us to be content with our survival modes. We have a thing called commentary. Some people just call it. It's what I think. But we comment on anything and everything externally. And we do that. It's almost like an inquiry into wondering what we think. We're not talking to anybody, although it helps to have someone in the room that doesn't necessarily always agree with you. And the reason for that is so that you can reconsider something, or you can assert what you believe must be true, so that you can ultimately get to the point where you don't have to agree with it, or take on a different view that makes it larger than what you believe it has to be to make you feel content within your own purview. None of this is negative. It's just methods of engaging with the world. If you're a thinking person, you'll probably say, well, emotion, if you're an emotional person, you might say, thinking isn't really as important But I know it's important if I agree with it. I have this sense inside that it's to be agreed with it because it makes me feel better. It's an emotional dispositional thing. If you're a very physical person, you'll get uptight and you'll go out and you'll run for 3 miles and you'll feel like, oh my God, life is great. If I didn't have my running, I wouldn't know what to do. Or you'll do push-ups 200, 300 at a time. I like to see that, by the way. I can do one, maybe two at a time. Uh, uh, but as soon as I say that, a commentary might come out, one or two. Is that all we can do? Wow. Well, if you hear that commentary, then you know you have a commentary. Why do you have it? To make sure that you keep a territorial boundary that enables you to feel comforted by an expression that will allow you to feel valued in some way. This is what we're trained to do. This is the norm. Mind you, you may have people who don't talk very much, and their commentary is inside, and they're declaring, that's this, that's that. Wow, is that a great idea? But they never say it out loud or internally. A lot of crap. Oh, excuse me, spiritual station. And any of these things are just commentary. We all have this, but you may not know because you didn't see that the commentary is supporting the structure that you believe has a balance relative to the need you have to be the way you are. Nothing is negative there. It's just, that's just us. So increasing another state into the beta state and still be able to function in the beta state, in the world state, and function and be able to be okay with it and do what you need to do is a matter of practice. All right then, Ian, since it's your question, then what about the experiences you have during the practice phases where you agree with you and don't agree with you, or you become frustrated with the fact that you keep on doing certain things? What you're basically doing there is relating to the thing you see. If you're trained to see things from a negative perspective, you will be trained to criticize your relationship with you. If you're also trained to encourage yourself, to elevate yourself because you need the elevation a lot, or even a little bit, then you will notice in you that you're elevating and you're pushing it a little bit. So push it. Energy will come in to help you push it so you can see it. It'll help you push your normal, intriguingly wonderful method of self-protection, grudgingly so. It'll come in to help you see it. Stop there. If you see it, slow it down the best you possibly can. If you commence to slow it down, you will immediately, and if you are successful, you will immediately begin to perceive commentary stronger, even when you don't speak. You'll hear it in your head. You'll feel it in your body. Use me, use me, use me. You're trained to use me, use me. Then use it. But there's another part of you. If you begin not to agree with it, another part of you helps you to soften down the need to play the same commentary roles that are there and available that you've practiced pretty well all your life. They're very subtle. That's why the alpha is so subtle. You see more in that state. You can learn how to soften down the intensity a bit when you're in that state. Yes, the reason why that's important is that as you're able to engage with altered state energy, it must fuse with this current state energy, physically, emotionally, mentally, because you're living here. And they do fuse literally, and more may be able to come in because you've learned how to engage with them without denigrating or elevating you as an individual. You're learning what you are and who you are, and all of it's all right. And you're learning that that is normal across the world. So no negativity is there. This is how it is on this planet. If you're from another planet, you got a problem. Fortunately for us, we're not from another planet. So the only problem we have is saying, wouldn't it be better to remain ignorant the rest of my life? And then when I die, find out I was well insulated? Absolutely. Except not really. Most people who are really sincerely interested in growing internally are involved with also wanting understanding, a little bit more wisdom, a little bit of being okay with being more loving and more caring, more trusting, or let's say being able to see where trust can be applied as opposed to not trusting anything. There's a dilemma with that. You all know by now, if you're over 18, that there are circumstances where trust might not have been the best thing. And there are circumstances where you trusted because you wanted to engage with the very thing you engaged with, and then saw it differently later. All of these things are normal in a growing being. If you ask yourself, how important, and I know some of you find this very important, is it that you can perceive more, or would you rather only learn and retain more? This is a really good question for a really strange answer. Both are okay. But here's the other answer. As you gain access to other states, your learning changes. You perceive things you didn't perceive before. So you're retraining yourself in a way to understand slightly different about, at first, about 95% of what you attempt to understand is based on the principles that you've already taken in, underlined, and decided are the only ones that you should use. That's today. Tomorrow, it's a total new ballgame. Moments are effectively important to you. Seconds of time. And you just keep layering off that new important information into that stuff that you already know. A defense against doing that is basically training. We are trained to be careful about what we take in. It's very legitimate because you've already learned what a perfect way of engaging in life is like. So parental backgrounds, old friends, whatever, doesn't matter. But you have mirrored them and you act like them in a much more subtle way. And of course, more ably. Not necessarily. But you're looking to find a you that you can watch and engage with and understand deeply, to recognize the act of living as a being of consciousness rather than a being of unconscious engagement with the very flow of force or universality that exists within you. You're aching to be there. You're aching to be at one with that. and also try to figure out just exactly what that means. I wish there was something that came in the mail about that, but it's kind of, you learn as you go. Learning as you go, it includes how other people have experienced it. But there is no perfect same way of having this occur in you. If you read broadly, read about what happens when energy enters into the being and how they dealt with it. And read also about the fact that they also still engaged with these planes after they were engaging with others. It's like an elevator. And the attempt to make some sense of things, and how many times, to be honest, find an honest one, will they tell you that they thought they were thinking in higher states, but it was just normal states they were using. In truth, this must be so until you are engaging quite differently than anyone on this planet engages. And your defensive mode is set up to help you to grow through you. The problem is your defensive mode is set up to help you not to grow, but only in the way that you can muster through those growing experiences or concepts or ideas. This is not a negative thing. This is so fortunate for us as human beings. But there are theories that are different than that. And if you're matching theories versus theories, try to soften that down a bit, and you're learning how to pay attention to yours, but yours are being affected by other states. I'll say it again. Your experiences are being affected by other states. Sometimes explanations can be affected by other states, but most often your defense or your commentaries affect what you need to believe to remain the same as you were before. And this is a method that relates to slow growth, which determines a kind of strange thing, gives you an angst, but at the same time helps you not to grow too quickly, unless you can allow yourself to be okay with you. Two concepts, especially love and trust, are really huge. These are hard to handle. I listen to people talking about these things all the time, and they are usually talked about from the process of a personality trying to make sense of things. And that's the only thing we can do. And you have to do that with yourself as you grow as well. Others can help. Others will always help. Our flaw in the West, and sometimes in the East as well, is that we believe that only we can have the right idea. It's not always true at all. This, of course, leads to the place that relates to transmission of consciousness. Because as the alpha and the beta levels shift out of sync with what we believe should be true and how things should be, it causes us to have some consternation. For example, if you had too much trust, you would be concerned about yourself. If you had too much love inside of you, you would be also linking with trust. You'd be thinking that you're in real trouble because it would be inadvertently expressing itself everywhere if it was conditioned by the personality. But the kind of love I'm talking about is conditioned from other states. That means there's really internal response on these states are only engaging with, for example, you might perceive where another person is having energy move through them as an act of love from higher state into this state. That's a perception of love. How's that? How does that figure out when you're dealing with people and friends and all that kind of thing? Yep, it's something you have to get used to because it's not related to the ideas that you have wrapped around these states. It's related to engaging with a perception of flow that relates to where that higher state enters into our states, our personality states, and the great wondrous capacity that it has to allow us to use it for any purpose at all. So much compassion, so much understanding, but with the proviso that you will ultimately learn how you use it. And not to be negated, but just to notice and have great respect for yourself as a growing being. This is very valuable. How easy is it? I would say probably not so much, not so simple, very complicated. Because the concept is defined quite differently on these levels of personality interaction. And these levels of personality interaction are very important, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. The Great Trilogy, which formulates and engages, from my point of view at least, through the use of energy that operates down through this chakra system on another level or another state. Some people call higher self or soul. This energy is profound. And it's like we have governors on all of these structures. Wherever it's going to really be a little bit too hard for us to handle, or it's there for us to see something, it's hard for us to see it and harder for us sometimes to handle it, and sometimes not so hard at all. We don't even notice it's there. So I hope this helps a little bit, and I've used this concept without any doubt to support my own way of seeing the world. Basically because we tend to see things in little pieces and bits, letters. If you spell a word wrong, somebody's going to tell you about it. But they're not going to say that they understand what you meant. They're going to say, you should have a C in school because school. Oh, okay, all right. Well, so sorry about that. I spelled it with two L's. School. But remember, I just put that in there so you could know it was school. The spelling was less important. The importance of you telling me about the spelling was based on what you need to do to make you feel good. I already felt good. I felt fine. I know it was spelled wrong, but I was on to the next word. You see, we do this because we have a need to feel content within ourselves. Somehow, we've been less content within ourselves. And if you heard what I just said, it's us being less content within ourselves. It's not because of other people. It's us not being content within ourselves. If you learn how to be more content within yourself, others around you will attempt to learn this and find it wanting. Or you have a system. Why should they take anybody else's on? But all of you are engaged with the concept of spiritual growth. So you're courageous forerunners, whoever you are, even if I've hardly ever met you before in my life. What courage it takes to deal with tremendous peace, tremendous love, tremendous trust in layers that are not here necessarily as much, but in other levels, and the courage to be okay with knowing it and to realize that others are all doing the same thing except they're not aware of it. So you're learning how to be consciously aware. It affects other people through the concept that we talked about, through transmission, through energy operating through the areas that are slightly open. They will feel like they're huge. Let them feel like they're huge. The personality is trying to get used to feeling comfortable in a place. Instead, because it's used to doing it a different way, anything different is not right. Anything like before is okay. This is not negative. This is just how it works for all of us. So being respectful and sincere about wanting to go into a state where this can be more comforting and comfortable for us is something that the personality is not really geared to do perfectly. All right. There's a whole lot of people who have had not very good upbringings, or have had moments when. But they use those systems to engage with the world because that's what they've learned. Absolutely no difficulty with that. That's what they should do until they see it differently and then attempt to do something slightly different. But they are now beginning to learn how to engage as if they're the monitor and there's something within them that can help them do that if they will allow themselves to do it. Wow, does that ever sound easy? No. But it means you're in a different state than you're normally used to. And this is state dependent. Mario O'Neill used to always remind me of what I had said one time. We are living in a state dependent inability to perceive. She's absolutely right. I think I remember doing that at a 5-day or something like that. But she figured out from her perspective the importance of knowing that might be true. That way, it gave her leeway when she messed up a bit to say this is state dependent inability to perceive. And she's absolutely right. Those higher levels, that's exactly how they think. There's no negation. Lower levels, chihuahua. Boy, do we ever. We feel a lot better when we can say this is wrong or that's right. And this is absolutely what we're trying to do. And we'll continue to do this. I'm glad that science is moving into some stages where they're beginning to realize that the personality system has always been set up to mimic other people, but also to mimic or to engage with and receive and accept and use higher state energy, which will have an effect on them as it moves into them because they're getting more prepared to be able to handle at different levels of engagement than they're used to. From the lowest to the highest, none of it is negative. It's just things that we work through the best we can. And you're being trained internally, if you believe that there are lifetimes, which I do, through all of the lifetimes that you've ever had. Whether you were tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor, whatever. Doesn't matter. A great, wondrous queen, king, whatever. You can be assured that you were probably a worm and a cricket in some other lifetimes. For whatever reasons. You just love singing, maybe. You just like making holes in the ground. God knows what that would be. But if you look at it metaphorically instead of art, like being articles or things, and you say, wow, learning is quite interesting. Maybe I can learn about my next stages upward through the experience of an engaging with states, alpha, for example, blending these states the best you can, and moving on. Turn the page, next day, new day. Do the best you can with it. Next day, new day. I hope this helped a little bit. Ian, sorry I answered the question and behind this because it was really an important question. Very valuable, extremely so. There may be one other one that I might want to say something. Oh, yeah. There are times, the question, I think it was from Jeannie, and a number of people have experienced this all over the place. There's an inner shaking that can go on. It's just like a tremor almost. And sometimes it can be strong, sometimes very subtle. And really, it's just like a little bit of an opening. If you can use those words when you're having it and say, oh, there's a little bit of an opening going on, rather than the commentary that it provokes because of the nervousness that we have in dealing with new things, then you can maybe smile a bit and say, this will happen again. Now, look, if this is a really strong tremor, go see a doctor. Find out what's causing this. Could be caused by all kinds of things in your nervous system, but the tremors internally, a little bit of shaking inside, which can feel like quite a bit actually. You feel like an earthquake sometimes. It's just energy moving through you that is different than what you're normally used to. Energy moving through you that is different than what you're normally used to. And the personality, after a little bit, gets used to that and then talks about it like it's in the past. It hasn't gone away. Same energy is still there, but you're used to it now. Personality has to get used to stuff at this level, and this is normal. I wish you all well, and thanks for listening.